Welcome to Does It Matter by Brainy Ballers, where we dissect the game with cutting-edge analytics to give you the upper hand. We analyze everything from hand sizes to average depth of targets to uncover hidden trends that no one else sees. Say goodbye to guesswork and hello to data-driven domination. Because here at Brainy Ballers, we don't just watch the game, we understand it. So get ready, it's podcast time.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're jumping into something pretty specific. NFL wide receiver 10-yard split times.
Yeah, that initial burst.
Exactly. For those of you tracking our series, you might remember our last Deep Dive found the 40-yard dash. Well, it had basically no correlation with fantasy football success.
Pretty surprising finding, that one.
It really was. So our mission today is to see if these, burst metrics, that explosion right off the line, actually offer more insight.
Right, and intuitively you'd think they have to matter, wouldn't you? I mean, that first step, getting separation, it feels crucial for a receiver.
Totally. It feels like it should. So, okay, let's break down how we tackled this. Our data comes from the top 50 PPR fantasy football finishers, going back quite a way since 2003.
Points per reception scoring, yeah.
And importantly, we only used official NFL draft combine numbers, trying to keep it, standardized.
Clean data is key. And we should probably define, when we say the bottom 10, we mean those players finishing 41st through 50th in fantasy points for that year.
Gotcha. So 41 to 50.
So first up, we just charted the average 10-yard split times, across different groups, top 5, top 10, next chunk 1130, and then down to that bottom group 3150.
What do those averages show? Anything jump out?
Well, this is where it often gets interesting with data versus intuition. Honestly, no clear trend.
Really?
Yeah, the times were kind of all over the place, scattered. No obvious sign that faster average splits meant way more fantasy points.
Huh. So the averages were a wash. Where did you go next?
We pivoted. We started looking at a differences chart analysis, basically trying to find if there was a specific range of times or maybe a threshold where the top guys showed up more often than the bottom guys.
Okay, looking for a pattern, not just an average.
Exactly. We did find something intriguing there. An initial range popped up.
Do you want to start dominating your drafts? At BrainyBallers.com, we've researched every metric under the sun for you to find which ones are best linked to fantasy points. You can access hundreds of metrics to sharpen your scouting ability so you know which metrics matter and which are just noise. Stop guessing on which thresholds to look for within each metric. Big numbers can be misleading or irrelevant. Our Ultimate Athlete Blueprints reveal essential scouting metrics, their importance and benchmarks within each metric that help predict a player's probability of being a success or bust. Elevate your scouting ability with Brainy Ballers Ultimate Athlete Blueprints today. Click the link in the description. Now back to the show.
Between 1.53 and 1.63 seconds.
1.53 to 1.63.
Right. And when we looked at our bottom 10 receivers, 79.0% of them fell within that range.
Okay, 79%.
But for the top 10 fantasy performers, that number went up to 84.0%.
84. Okay, a 5% difference. More top guys in that window.
5.0% increase, yeah. It's noticeable, but is it game-changing? So we pushed it further.
All right, needed to refine that.
Absolutely. More spreadsheet testing, and we zeroed in on an even tighter optimal range, 1.53 to 1.62 seconds.
Okay, shaved off 100th of a second there.
Yep. And that specific window, 1.53 to 1.62, it appeared 15.1% more often in the top 10 results compared to the bottom 10.
Whoa, okay, 15.1%. That feels like a bigger signal.
It definitely catches the eye more, doesn't it? But this raises the critical question. Just because it appears more often, is it actually statistically significant? Or could it just be, noise in the data?
That's the key part, right? Correlation versus just coincidence.
So we ran Pearson correlation testing. That's the standard way to measure the strength of a linear relationship between two things. The result for 10-yard splits and fantasy points, it was extremely low, 0.015.
0.015, wow. That sounds tiny.
It is tiny. It basically indicates, statistically speaking, there's no correlation, none to speak of.
So almost zero relationship.
Pretty much. And just to give you some context, a strong correlation, you'd want to see something like 0.1 or higher. Positive or negative doesn't matter for strength. And something analysts generally agree does matter, like, say, a running back's draft capital, where they were picked, that showed a Pearson value of negative 0.234 in related tests. Much, much stronger link.
Yeah, you can see the difference clearly there. -234 versus .015.
Exactly. Our .015 for the 10-yard split is just not meaningful for trying to predict anything.
And we even double-checked this over time, didn't we? Looking at different decades.
We did, yeah. We compared decades and found that the slight strength of that 1.53 to 1.62 threshold, it actually seemed to decline a little bit in the most recent decade.
So getting weaker,
Yeah.
not stronger.
Right, which just reinforces the idea that it's not a robust, reliable statistical pattern.
Okay.
So if we're connecting all the dots here, the big picture is, yeah, the 10-yard split showed some interesting little patterns like that 1.53 to 1.62 range popping up more often for top guys.
The 15.1% difference.
Right. But the deeper statistical analysis, the correlation tests, they clearly show these patterns are not statistically significant. You really can't rely on them for predictive purposes.
So using it would be kind of flying blind, statistically.
Essentially, yes. The research concluded using this metric would be regardless of having no statistical backing. Plain and simple.
Okay. So let's wrap this up. What does this all mean for you listening at home? Well, it means that while this deep dive did uncover a specific kind of fascinating range for 10-yard splits, that 1.53 to 1.62 seconds, where top fantasy guys appeared more often. The hard data, when you really test it, it just doesn't support using that split time as a reliable way to predict future fantasy football success. It's another piece of that combine puzzle that looks interesting, but maybe doesn't unlock the whole picture on its own. And maybe that leaves you with a thought to chew on. We looked at something like the 10-yard split, right? It feels so obviously important for a receiver, that initial burst.
Totally intuitive.
But the hard data doesn't show a strong predictive link for fantasy points, so it makes you wonder, how much do we rely on that gut feeling, that qualitative eye test, when we evaluate complex things like athletic performance? What other things, maybe in sports, maybe elsewhere, that we accept as fact might actually be built more on, intuition and compelling stories than on solid statistical ground? Something to think about.